Come on in, Bolt fam. Something is happening in Los Angeles, and the deeper this offseason goes, the more it feels like the Chargers might be building something way bigger than most people even realize right now. Because this is not just one interesting move on offense, not just some veteran buzz on defense, not just one draft name climbing boards. When you put all of it together, it starts to send a real message about where this team is headed. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because around here we follow every single Chargers move with zero fluff. And I want to start with the name that probably made a lot of people on the outside stop and say, wait, Keaton Mitchell? Really? But this is where the real Chargers read comes in. Because when a CBS analyst puts Keaton Mitchell on a list of the most intriguing offensive additions of 2026 free agency, next to heavy hitters like Kyler Murray, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, Kenneth Walker, Mike Evans, and Tyler Linderbaum, that changes the conversation. That does not mean Mitchell is suddenly some fully established superstar. It means there is something in his profile that jumps off the screen when the topic is real impact inside an offense. And the biggest point is simple: explosion. Mitchell is not coming in to be the Chargers' RB1. That still looks like Omarion Hampton, who dealt with injuries as a rookie but still put up 737 total yards and 5 touchdowns in just 9 games. Kimani Vidal also showed up, led the team in rushing yards, and proved he deserves touches. So Mitchell's value is not about stealing the spotlight from everybody else. His value is adding a layer this Justin Herbert offense has often been missing. Big play juice, insane acceleration, and a real threat in open space. And when you look at the numbers, the hype starts making sense. Mitchell has averaged over 6 yards per carry in his career, has an absurd explosive run rate, and was the fastest running back in the NFL last season by average speed. That is not some random stat nugget. That is the kind of trait that forces defenses to play on their heels. And once a defense starts respecting a player like that, the whole offense breathes easier. Space changes, angles change, pressure changes. Herbert gets more help. Los Angeles becomes a whole lot less predictable. Now let's separate fact from excitement. Fact: Mitchell is not arriving as the centerpiece of the offense. Interpretation: he could become a way bigger part of this attack than people expect right now. Speculation, and let's be clear that it is speculation. If the Chargers know how to use him as a change-of-pace weapon and also tap into his special teams value, this could end up being one of the most fun and most underrated signings of the entire offseason. Because at the end of the day, this is exactly the kind of move outsiders shrug off and real fans spot before everybody else. But if there is curiosity and upside on offense, on defense there is urgency. And this is where things get serious in a hurry. Because while a lot of people have been locked in on the offensive line drama, the edge rusher issue is still sitting there in plain sight for the Chargers. And the possible link to Cameron Jordan is exactly the kind of rumor this fan base should be paying attention to, not because he is some long-term fix, but because he could be the right answer for a very specific moment. Jordan is 36 years old. That is a fact. Nobody here is pretending the Chargers would be signing the Cameron Jordan of 8 years ago. But experience, leadership, football IQ, and locker room presence still matter, especially for a team trying to win right now. And that is exactly what the Chargers are. They are not rebuilding. They are not sitting around waiting 3 years to see what happens. With Justin Herbert, with this core, and with the clear need to keep the defense aggressive after losing Odafe Oweh, it makes perfect sense to look at a veteran who can walk in and contribute. And there is one huge detail in all of this. The team itself already showed last year that it understood how big the edge problem was when it went out and got Oweh. He came in, he fit the system, he helped hold things together when Khalil Mack was out, and then he left in free agency. So let's not act like everything is magically solved with just Tuli, Tui, Polo, Tu, and Mack. Those are two serious names, no question, but today's NFL demands rotation, depth, and relentless pressure. If your third guy in that pass rush rotation drops off, the whole thing can crack. That is why the idea of Cameron Jordan as a stopgap makes so much sense. If the price is right, of course. Because the Chargers are usually conservative for a reason when the cost starts getting out of hand. But if this is a short, smart deal that brings in a versatile, respected veteran who has seen every kind of football battlefield imaginable, that sends a loud message that Los Angeles wants to compete now without blowing up its financial flexibility. And that balance matters more than people think. Would you pay for that kind of experience, or would you save that move for after the draft? And if edge is a concern, the secondary is asking for answers too. Losing Benjamin St-Juste in free agency is not the kind of headline that shakes the entire NFL world by itself, but once you stack it on top of the pressure already sitting on this defense, it becomes crystal clear that the cornerback room still needs help. And that is where two names enter the picture and completely change the temperature. L'Jarius Sneed and Trevon Diggs. Two very different profiles, two very different kinds of risk, and two possible moves that could shake up this Chargers defense in a big way. Starting with Sneed, to me he is the safer read. Not because he is risk-free, far from it. He is coming off an injury-marred stretch in Tennessee and does not arrive with the same shine he had when he left Kansas City. But there is still a real base of reliability there. There is big game experience, there is physicality, there is the ability to line up outside and give this group a level of stability that a late-round rookie might not be ready to provide right away. And for a team trying to compete immediately, that matters a lot. Then there is Trevon Diggs, and that is a totally different gamble. He is basically the opposite in terms of projection. Less stability, more volatility, but also way more home run playmaking potential. NFL fans know both sides of Diggs. He can give you interceptions, flip a game on its head, and light up a stadium in one snap. But he can also be inconsistent. He can also leave you exposed. And coming off a disappointing season after returning from injury, it would be reckless to treat him like some guaranteed bounce-back star. But here's the really interesting part. The Chargers do not necessarily need either one of these guys to return to absolute peak form. What they need is real support, talented depth, and a more trustworthy answer for a group that looks a little weaker than it did at the start of free agency. And in that context, both names make sense at the right price. One gives you more floor, the other gives you more ceiling. One helps steady the room, the other can steal a game-changing play out of thin air. And that is exactly why this decision says so much about Joe Hortiz's plan. If he goes after a steadier veteran, the message is immediate competitiveness. If he takes a bigger swing on a name like Diggs, the message is belief in coaching, development, and upside. Either way, this cornerback room needs help, fast. So drop your take in the comments, hit the like button, and tell me straight up, between Sneed and Diggs, who are you betting on right now? Now here comes the part that might end up being one of the biggest turning points of this entire offseason. The draft is the answer for replacing what Odafe Oweh really meant to this defense. Because losing a player like that is not just about losing numbers. It is about losing a function. Oweh did not just bring stats, he brought a profile, he brought a physical presence. He brought the kind of juice that kept the pressure alive when Khalil Mack went down. He fit into a rotation that finally looked complete. So when the name Malachi Lawrence starts climbing during this pre-draft process, Bolt fam has every reason to pay attention. The strongest part of this story is not just that he is rising on boards, it is the comparison. The second analyst starts saying his physical profile looks like Oweh's, alarms should start going off in Los Angeles. Because the Chargers do not just need another edge body to fill out the room. They need someone who has the tools to handle a very specific role in this defense. And if this prospect can offer that kind of possibility, the entire conversation changes. Now let's slow it down for a second because there is nuance here. Lawrence is not a perfect prospect. He needs to improve against the run. He needs to be more consistent at the point of attack, and he is still a long way from being a polished plug-and-play product. That is fact. But it is also fact that he was productive at UCF, tested well at the combine, and has physical tools that do not just grow on trees. So this becomes one of those classic front office questions. Do you buy the current flaws because you believe in the future fit? And honestly, for the Chargers, that makes a ton of sense. Because if last year's defense worked so well when it had that mix of force, speed, and versatility in the pass rush, then replacing that profile has to be a priority. It does not have to be an exact copy of Oweh, but it does have to be somebody who can bring that kind of impact back to the overall shape of the defense. If Malachi Lawrence is actually there when the Chargers are on the clock, I think this is the kind of pick that might look aggressive from the outside, but feels completely logical to people who really follow the team. This could change a lot in Los Angeles. Does that name sell you as a draft gamble, or would you rather go with a more polished edge rusher? At the end of the day, what I see with the Chargers right now is a team that may not have made the loudest move of the offseason yet, but it is stacking signals. Keaton Mitchell brings explosion. Cameron Jordan shows up as a smart possibility for a real edge problem. Sneed or Diggs would be two very different answers for a secondary that needs attention. And Malachi Lawrence feels like the kind of draft name that could restore physicality and bite to this pass rush. None of that by itself closes the case. But together, it starts to look like a plan. Now I want to hear from Bolt fam. Are you seeing a real strategy take shape, or do you still think the Chargers need one big haymaker move in Los Angeles? Subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and stay locked in because every Chargers move matters.